I'm John Hess. I'm from Scenic, and I'm joined today on stage by my colleague Hervey Allen from Network Startup Resource Center, University of Oregon. And we're going to talk quite briefly about a series of peer... Use the microphone. We're going to talk very briefly about the series of PRP FIONA workshops that we collaborated on in 2018. So among the goals of the workshop is something that was captured in essence by Ender Manga, the current ESNet director. Throughput is more important than bandwidth. And so how do we get there? These workshops in the bigger picture, in the context of the RNE community, one of the important things is that they're captured by the statement that our researchers should not also have to be CI or network engineers unless that's part of their field of study. And that hands-on training for our CI and network engineers can help them be more effective, develop and deploy end-to-end data movement, measurement, and analysis tools, and also develop for themselves a better understanding of scientific workflows that our researchers use, and in those workflows where our CI engineers can make a positive impact. And also an important aspect of these workshops is to part of the democratizing access to data movement, container, and other CI technologies. And how does this fit within the PRP? So my own experience was touched on as something that Lewis mentioned earlier today. I'm one of those Scenic engineers that had engaged with Steve Hooter's group out of NSRC and went out to and helped with one of their direct engineering assistance engagements with the University of Guam. And that was a wonderful experience. I mean, I've worked on the campus environment, worked directly with our researchers. This was, again, an opportunity to work with a group that was excited about new technologies, excited about learning about it, and this provided an opportunity for them to do some hands-on, working shoulder to shoulder, making a positive impact for their campus. And so when Tom DeFonte and Larry Smar and Lewis were developing ideas for the PRP, is about how can we develop this message and make it have a broader impact. One of the things that we considered were the techniques that NSRCs use for developing classes, the pedagogical structure of the classes, and actually delivering the content, and a very large emphasis on the hands-on nature of these workshops. So a quote from another ESNet director, former ESNet director, Greg Bell, that I liked in the kickoff meeting in Stanford in 2014 that led toward the development of the PRP is this statement, is that for the hardest problems, not just in physics, but climate science and genomics, there are massive teams working around the world. Our job is to make geography irrelevant. And I think that holds true for this workshop as we consider how do we scale and replicate the successes that we've realized with the PRP as we move toward an NRP and then out to the GRP.
So as part of this effort, we've had a few workshops. Let's see what happens. Oh boy, we've lost it. We have another laptop, so it's always possible. Should we try it real quick and then give up if it doesn't work? All right. Give one go here, and then if not, you may have lots of pretty pictures you'll miss out on. Huh?
It's the tag team connector.
I don't know. Let's give this a go. Anything? Yep.
Well, we can do that, but I think we also worked out a scheme that we can just talk.
We have a backup plan.
And that we continue the conversation at the Museum of the Rockies.
That's right.
We, just as Jerry did, we promised to upload the slides to make them available to you.
Okay, so this looks like we are not going to sync. So I have a very pretty picture of our workshop that we started this past Thursday and ran through Saturday, and then we had a tutorial on Sunday. And I'm going to go through the text bits, and I'll tell you when you're missing out on our nice pictures. So we've had 3 workshops this year that are PRP FIONA workshops, and they were held in Monterey as part of the Scenic 2018 meeting. Then we worked with Nordjunet, and we had a workshop in Copenhagen in April. That's a bit of the GRP emphasis here, trying to expand this network out a bit, this idea. And then a Bozeman workshop, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday with the tutorial. And we have a nice list here of all the participants and where they're from, so you'll see that when you look at our slides later on. And then at the one message here is that those workshops involved about 70 participants across almost 50 organizations in just 3 workshops. And we've had a number of international groups join us. A lot of EPSCoR, TCU, HBCU groups have joined us as well. The Bozeman workshop, we had 30 registered participants, 27 institutions, 21 of them from EPSCoR states, 5 HBCUs, 1 TCU, and then we had Universidad del Turabo from Puerto Rico, the University of Amsterdam from the Netherlands, and RMP in Brazil. So it was a good mixed group. I would say our group, we were kind of joking about this, ranged from some people who could have written half the software that we taught and taught the class themselves, to people who may never have heard of the terminology or had only just heard of the terminologies that we were talking about. So it was interesting. So on the first day, we started out with what we called the basics, where we just introduced people to the core CentOS operating system and what you're going to need to do in order to install some of the tools that we were about to install. Then we got people running with the PerfSonar test point bundle. At that point, we talked about science DMZs and security. So you've seen a number of that today in some of the discussions around here. And then we showed a demo of a data flow and data transfers. That was pretty interesting. Day 2, we took a next step forward and we installed some data movement tools like GridFTP. We got a Mad Dash configured with GridFTP, and we got all the software installed, we got the process starting to run, and then we let it run overnight. And on the next day, day 3, we diagnosed and tested the environment, because actually setting up a Mad Dash GridFTP grid among 30 separate machines all at once involves quite a bit of troubleshooting. So we spent a chunk of the day doing that. We did a deep dive Q&A, and then we talked about deployment planning a bit. Last day was a completely different session, and that's where Jupyter Hub was discussed, Kubernetes, Rook orchestration, and Ceph storage. And we had some people from Google come, some of our other presenters. I actually missed that day, but I had a good time taking a nice hike. And then at this point, quick thing that the participants actually did, and this is part of the philosophy, is that we want people to do this stuff hands-on, because there's that tactile memory. If you've actually typed the command, if you've actually installed it, perhaps you'll be able to go home and repeat what we've shown you if we have some cookbooks. So we used a mix of exercises where you had to go and you actually had to type the stuff into the command line. That was the first day. Second day, the exercises are significantly more complicated, and if you actually tried to do it by hand, it would probably take half a day just to do it. So we used some Jupyter notebooks for that, where the participants can click through and then read about the output that they're seeing. So during that time, we had remote FIONA nodes, so remote small nodes, in a rack at UC San Diego, and the students used those, and we had them configure these remote nodes with SSH, security, public-private keys. We had them actually install the PerfSonar test point bundle, Jupyter Lab software, GridFTP servers. Then we had central management boxes, and we had team leaders put those together, and they installed the central management bundle from the PerfSonar group. We did configuration of mesh testing. We actually played with iPerf3, with pScheduler, with all those good tools. Then we had troubleshooting steps with Mad Dash and the Esmond interface. And then we installed a local Kubernetes instance. So we kept them busy, and then you're going to talk about hardware a little bit here at this point.
So the FIONAs that we used for this workshop are the same platform that we used in Monterey and in Copenhagen. These are around retail $250 units. They have 2x1 gig interfaces and come as shipped with a 32 gig eMMC5 memory. And then they also have internally space for another memory storage in which the FIONets in San Diego were kitted out with additional memory from 2 gig to 4 gig of RAM. And the storage was in the form of mSATA. So we provisioned those with 250 gig mSATA drives. And what this allowed us to do is that the relative performance of these units is that they can, memory to memory, they can nearly fill a 1 gigabit pipe. Bill Owens here, as you've seen on stage, and maybe we'll share a story at the Museum of the Rockies, in his local configuration in Ethernet, he configured his FIONets into 2x1 gig lags and was successful in nearly filling that 2 gigabit pipe. In our classroom testing earlier this week, we were realizing disk-to-disk performance among the FIONets using these mSATA drives in excess of 800 megabits per second. So one of the things that part of the draw and the benefit that we perceive with these particular series of workshops is that we also brought with us here to Bozeman the set of FIONas that the students could then take home with them to continue their education and also explore the benefit of the FIONas in their home institution. And so this was, there are some pictures here that when you are able to view the slides on deck, the slide deck online, the handing out of the FIONets was sort of the certificate of completion. And if you're following along with the Kubernetes reference to containers, that the FIONets themselves were kind of the containers of the certificate of completion. So there's also a reference to a bill of materials for assembling the kit that was at Cal IT2. Again, as Hervey was mentioning, we had provisioned around 30 of these units for the student individual use, a separate set of about 5 for running essential management bundles, and then the bits and odds and ends that included a 48 port 1 gig switch, a quantity 2 of 1RU servers that provided both kind of the Pixie boot environment as well as other repository for the workshop materials locally, and other support materials. And so that the total kit was something just south of 20,000 US. So depending on, this is something that may be for some institutions, something that could be replicable for developing an environment both locally and, as in our case, something that could be made available for remote learning environments. And so I'm clicking through some nice pictures of other stuff. And then do we want to?
So we'll talk together. So we built this whole sort of workshop series with a set of tools. We ran the workshop websites on a tool called Plone. That was pretty useful. It's good for working as a team and uploading the materials. We build out HTML, and what we've done in our group is we use Markdown and Pandoc, if any of you have done that, so we can write the materials in Markdown, which is a really simple markup language, and then we have a special template, and we generate HTML or PDF out of that, and then we use Jupyter Labs for some of the more complex labs that we did. We used Rocket Chat with all the students, so when we'd hit something, somebody had a comment, something's going on, we had a place to paste it right away, which is actually really useful. We picked that up from these guys here, so we'll probably take that with us in our future workshops. We used GitLab for all the materials, and the GitLab will be available to anybody who wants access to it, so you can gain access if you're thinking of trying to replicate some of this training or interested. We installed a bunch of the PerfSonar software, right? Test point bundle, central management, using Esmond as well. And then we set up a Nagios remote monitoring instance to monitor our remote FIONets. And that was super useful during the workshop because occasionally something would go down. We could see it. We knew about it. And then we had our hands-on remote console by the name of Joel Polizzi. Thank you very much, Joel, who took care of us when that happened and rebooted the machines. So, lessons learned.
Yeah, so coming up on our last slide, if you will. So what did we learn from this, or from these series of workshops? So again, drawing on the experience from NSRC and their long history of productive workshops, Start early. Seek and incorporate input from your participant base, other stakeholders, and other dev teams that are doing similar workshops. And then iterate. This is kind of the DevOps model, where you solicit feedback from your students, incorporate that into future workshops.
So actually, why don't you talk about the hardware?
Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned, in this case, we used a generate of these gigabyte EL20s that you'll see online. These are from the Internet of Things type of product line. So one of the things that, as we were mentioning, we had to rely on this awesome Joel to be our remote hands at UC San Diego. So in thinking about what we would like to do in future workshops and the next generation of hardware that we'd use for putting this together, is that we really would love to have a functional out-of-band access, a real serial console on these devices, provisioning internally for whether it be multiple MSATA, or if there are later models in a similar price point that present M2, being able to have multiples of those so that we could really, as we did in this class, for doing grid FTP, we use ZFS file structure, both for the storage of the reference data sets that we're transferring. We also, as if you heard Dima's talk, we also use ZFS for the Kubernetes hands-on experience.
Then quite a bit of time was spent refining outreach and communications to the community, the NRP community, to try and target the groups that we were really trying to help out with this. Like I said, in our workshop, we had a wide range, which was expected, and it was very gratifying to see that we'd actually gotten a number of people in the room who I think benefited from this training and hopefully could go home and begin to stand up some of these tools, which would really be useful, especially in the context of what we're trying to do. And when you can see our presentation, we have the URLs to the GitLab, and we also have our contact information for both myself and John, and our Rocket Chat channel, where you can connect if you'd like to, if you have questions. And if you want access to that GitLab, you can write one of us or post it to the Rocket Chat, and we can help you out with that, and then you can finish up with it.
Yeah, so the Rocket Chat is also the same platform that we're using for the NRP technical pilot. So there are a number of channels on there that may be of interest. Welcome to join those that may be of use to you. So if you have questions for us, let's walk over to the Museum of the Rockies and continue the conversation. And as you walk over, we do have one leading question for you. Is please think about how do we scale this effort to the NRP and the GRP. So thank you very much.